Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of fast-paced racing action in the SimRacing International UKSimRacing GT3 Championship Season 16 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. Tonight marks round number 4 of 10 and we have made our way to United States of America for the first of 3 visits this season, and we are here at what it is one of the ultimate homes of motorsport, if not in the US of A, then definitely in the world. It is none other than the Brickyard, or known in full as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A circuit which has been the scene of some absolutely incredible racing action over the course of its extensive history, but also the scene of some controversy as well. Perhaps most notably, of course, the 2005 Formula 1 US Grand Prix, what is a circuit that continues to keep drivers guessing week in, week out, whether it be on the oval or its road course. And today, our GT3 racers, we definitely take it on its absolutely brilliant 14-corner road course layout as they look to vie for supremacy as we march our way towards the midway point of the season. But plenty of action is still to come, and indeed we've had plenty of action so far, and here at the Brickyard we might start to see some indicators as to who our early season favourites are across our 4 classes of Elite, Pro, Premier and Evo. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this broadcast live from circuit side, albeit it's a post-round broadcast for your viewing pleasure, which does mean that whilst this broadcast is live currently, available only on YouTube at the SimRacing International YouTube channel, indeed go to youtube.com and search for SimRacing International or alternatively SRI, and you can be tuning in there and join the likes of a good number of individuals who are there. First and foremost there, he gets himself into pole position in the YouTube chat. Well, good evening there to Alex Brown, and I hope you're doing well, Alex, and indeed you've had a good day so far, and if not, we'll turn that frown upside down into a big old classic smile. And on top of that is for the fact that this is a post-round broadcast. The racing action occurred as of what was none other than Sunday, the 19th of October 2025, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live today on this fine Wednesday, the 22nd of October. We do not know what happens. We're in the practice session that's just been completed, the qualifying session that's currently ongoing, or alternatively the race that's upcoming, and therefore it's close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. And as always, we do ask, if you do happen to know the outcome, no spoilers please, because we don't want it spoiled for us here at the commentary booth, nor do we want it spoiled for the guys and girls at home tuning in for the first time. But in the commentary booth you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action as it unfolds over the entirety of the season. For our schedule then for tonight, times in British Summer Time, that's BST or Universal Coordinate Time +1, UTC +1. We have a 60-minute race on the schedule, and that's due to get underway in approximately 6 to 5 minutes time at 7:10 this evening. Well, let's give you a quick recap then of the season so far and what we've got lying in wait. Because last time out, of course, it was round number 3, and on the 12th of October, we made our way to Spain for the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, and there we got to see some very intriguing stories play out across our 4 classes. Also, a lot of drama on the opening lap, particularly in the mid-pack and in our lower classes as well, and that definitely served to shake things up coming into this round. But after today, we'll be making our way back to the European continent on the 26th of October for round number 5 to wrap up the first half of the season, and it will be at the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg Grand Prix circuit, where we'll bring the first chapter of the championship to a close, and there we'll definitely be seeing who are the leaders going into that second half that immediately follows, and who will be the ones to beat. But recapping the standings then, after 3 rounds of racing, we begin with the Elite Drivers' Championship. And as we can see, Joe Nathan for Rage Against the Game Esports now leads in Elite, having picked up his first win of the season last time out in an absolutely brilliant strategy versus pace battle versus Richard Simnor. The DCW Racing driver was the fastest in the Ford Mustang on 1 lap pace. However, Nathan was able to protect his tyres and use his Ford a bit more conservatively, and that was the difference between the 2 drivers there as Nathan takes a 20-point lead. Casper Rottner sits in 3rd on 198 points, old dudes in cars, and the problem for him now is the fact he's got growing pressure from Andy Jones, who finally sealed the deal for a podium last time out in Spain for DCW Racing, and he is only the best part of 22 points ahead of Helder Gonzalez for Tractix Racing, who missed the season opener, is definitely on fine form with 2 rounds in the bag, including of course that round 2 win. Felix Schwerker sits in 6th for Venari Racing. We didn't see him on the grid last time out, but we hope to see him back today. We have Ryan Davis there for Empire Motorsport, just ahead of Jacko Taylor, the 2 teammates there, albeit double the points from Davis to Jacko Taylor. And then we do have Ulrich Scholl and Javi Sierra completing a top 10, with the Venari Racing driver having been seen in the season opener, not been seen since, and Sierra there with 2 DNFs in the 6th place. He started to move forward. Joe Newman and Raz Harper complete your top 12 in the Elite class, and then we come to the Pro class, and here we can see the complexion is quite similar, with 2 wins in an 8th. Mikey Storey leads the way on 248 to the 230 points of Tractix Racing's Christer Halsoy, and can anybody slow the Dexterous Motorsports driver down? Christian Baltret from Morica MA70 Esports, he's yet to score a podium, but he's scored all top 5 so far. He sits in 3rd on 204 points, head of Cy Anthony, who'll be saying a big thank you to for the iRacing replay file we're using for this round's broadcast, who sits in 4th there. On the UK Sim Racing price driver, it'll then be Darren Sharples with the old dudes in cars, blue driver there, yet score a top 5, but coming close on 2 occasions. Can he finally do the deal today? Because he's only 4 points ahead of Pegasus Sim Racing's Ivan Sander. Then it's Christian Third for Panda Spec Motorsports ahead of Nathan Scott, with the Empire Motorsport driver being followed up by the third place man, who if he had 2 more laps in Spain last time out, he would have potentially been on course for the victory in the Pro class. Jack Barker there for Made for Racing, who's finally found a way to get that Lamborghini to click, and he's only ahead of Nathan Anstis, his long-term rival for the best part of the whole year, with the UK Sim Racing Mansell driver only behind based on result countback. Then it's Peter Cox and Giles Philip Hertz complete your pro at top 12. As for the Premier Class drivers, well, as we can see, Samuel Clark right now is the man to beat for Dexterous Motorsports with 290 points from 2 wins in the second versus 2 second place in the fourth for Old Dudes in Cars Blues Hendrik Zilka. Ricardo Luis Pereira for SimRacing International's Privateers of the Caribbean, he sits in third with muddling of results but back on form last time out, ahead of Alan Lever there for UK SimRacing Mansell. The round 1 winner is only 18 points ahead, with in fact 14 points ahead I should say, of Austin Graff, with the Axis Sim Sports driver there being followed up by Richard Jones for Slow and Steady Racing, and then we do have Joe Sparrow ahead of Daniel Pays, with Luke Sherlock and John Watt completing your Premier top 10. And outside the top 10, a further 30 points behind is Wayne Douglas, the privateer, for DC Motorsport ahead of Steve Hughes for UK Sim Racing Price. And then coming to the Evo class, last but by no means least of our Drivers' Championships, it's Edward Berry for UK Sim Racing Hill, who leads, albeit his lead was slightly slowed with that 6th place finish last time out in Spain. And Joel Loudon, meanwhile, was able to secure his first win by comparison by staying out of danger and just simply smoothing out the path to victory there. And the Sim Racing International same privateer Ryan Drive will be absolutely ecstatic having picked up that win, and he'll be looking for at least another podium state, if not another win, to move him into the lead. Richard White sits in third, yet score a podium, but looking strong for UK Sim Racing Mansell. But you'll notice there the fact that right now the top 2 are pulling away, and it's Richard White who's trying to bring the rest of the field up behind him, with Simon Hartley for Darkwing Racing with SimCoach setups sitting in fourth, having missed a round, but otherwise 2 podiums, including the win so far. Jordan Jones, his teammate, sits only the best part of 28 points behind. And then we do have Max Galgate in 6th for Split Strat Esports. Always keep your eyes out for him. He's always a ferocious competitor. Head of Joseph Preston, with the JSD Motorsports driver being followed up by Tom Weston, Darryl Giacovelli and Carl Tivoli, who complete your Evo top 10. And from the Privateers, it's the Phoenix Racers Paul Maffey, who wasn't on the grid for the last 2 rounds, ahead of Darian Giacovelli. And that's how your top 12 in Evo stands. As for the Teams Championship, well, we see your top 5, and it's Dexterous Motorsports who are starting to carve away at the front, with Clark and Story taking the absolute lion's share of the points thus far, on 538 ahead of DCW Racing, who hold on to a resilient second. How the fight for second is growing quick, with Old Dudes in Cars Blues pair of Sharples and Zilka only 20 points behind, and then you do have Tractix Racing in 4th, ahead of UK Sim Racing Mansell. But the closure is very tight between them all in the top 5, and indeed, as you look outside the top 5, it's only a small gap before you get to Darkwing Racing with SimCoach setups on 352, but again, they lead a pack of teams, ahead of SRI 7 Privateer Ryan by the best part of only 18 points. There is a further 16 to Old Dudes in Cars, followed up by 292 points apiece for Empire Motorsport and Slow and Steady Racing, and that's how your top 10 in the Teams Championship stand after 3 rounds. But a quick recap of our circuit before we do go racing, of course, because our host circuit for today is the road course of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, located near the commune of Speedway in Marion County of the US state of Indiana, from which it takes its name. Well, this circuit definitely is stapled into the minds of many an international racer, and as all our drivers get set and ready to go, well, big thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their simulator, but also the fantastic track maps and these 14 corners, predominantly focused on an infield section with very little use of the oval other than one of the slight quarter banks, and also the back stretch. This is definitely going to be a circuit that's going to put our drivers to the ultimate test, and spaced out with 2 extended straights, it's going to feel like a circuit of 2 halves. But in terms of rules, before we go racing, well, we've got to give you a quick reminder, of course. This is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 60% for all races. That will mandate a pit stop, more on that very shortly. Qualifying wise, the closed qualifying format shall be used, with drivers having 4 flying laps available, of which to try and set their pole time, of which they're just about to make the way to the grid. In terms of the race, it shall commence via double file rolling start, as it's a tradition of the UK SimRacing GT3 Championship, with there being 1 mandatory pit stop for fuel. Changing tyres is entirely optional. Each driver has 1 fast spare available, and should they get to 20 instant points or more, they will receive a drive-through penalty. That'll be the only other time we see them come into the pits, if it's not for repairs or for their mandatory pit stop. Meanwhile, all race journeys shall be conducted post-race. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's make our way back to circuit side, and as we do, while drivers are getting ready to line up on the grid, and this is how they'll line up then for round number 4 of season 16 of the SimRacing International powered UK SimRacing GT3 Championship, brought to you on iRacing. And as you can see, Joe Nathan, he carries on from where he left off last time out at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia, with pole position there, overall in elite class, and by quite the margin of over 1.5 tenths for Edge Against the Game Esports ahead of DDK Racing Team's Raz Harper. But to be fair, Harper really put himself right on the scene there. Brilliant effort from Harper, no doubt about it. And in starting in third place, we're going to get his name right this time. It's none other than Christian Furs, who takes pro pole position there for Panda Spec Motorsports, and he'll be absolutely pleased with that one. Only 300ths faster than Tractix Racing's Christer Halsoy. From the Norwegian, it'll then be Daniel Shilcott for Tractix Racing, ahead of none other than your premier pole sitter, intriguingly, and that is the driver of John Watt. What a great effort from John, and he'll be very happy at that one because he's put himself right ahead of the pack. And the Scotsman there for SRI7 Privateer Ryan, well, he has the best part of what is 4 cars between him and the second place man, Ricardo Luis Pereira. However, along the way, he's going to have all elite drivers, starting with Richard Simnor for DCW Racing and Ryan Davis at Empire Motorsport, who make up your full throw of the grid. On row number 5, it's going to be Yavi Sierra, who has one of his better qualifying performances of the season. And then we come to your second place premier driver of Luis Pereira there for SRI Privateers of the Caribbean. But coming from the name after the Disney movie to a little bit further down, in terms of the team name that is, we then do see best of rest in 11th place, the third of your Premier Tries, and that is going to be Alan Lever for UKSimRacing Mansell. Mikey Storey with a very odd qualifying performance there for the Dexterous Motorsports driver, couldn't quite get 2 and 2 to add up to 4, and did it only added up to 3.5, and he starts in what is third place of your Pro Drives, but all the way down in 12th overall. And then we do have Joe Sparrow just behind in there for JSD Motorsports, only in the end 200ths off, if that. Casper Brotner starts as 1 in 14th place for Old Dudes in Cars, and then we do have Darren Sharples 15th, just behind his sister team driver Old Dudes in Cars Blue. In 16th place, it's going to be Robin Pownier as the formation lap is about to get underway, and the sim coach driver there, well, he'll be relatively happy with that qualifying performance because it's one of his better qualifying performances of the season so far, but he'll still want to keep on moving forward. We also see that intriguingly, Cy Anthony started 17th for UK Sim Racing Price for a weaker qualifying performance compared to what he's perhaps used to for the Welshman. And then the big surprise, Samuel Clark for Dexterous Motorsport starts 18th on this grid, what is 6th place in the Premier class. Well, given the run of form, he's going to dig deep state if he wants to add another podium to his run of podium so far. That's not where he expected the Briton to start. Then we do have Christian Maltrek starting 19th for Miracle MA70 Esports, with a bit of difficult qualifying performance for him. And then you come to your Evo pole sitter, and that is going to be Thomas Weston there. Brilliant effort from him. He starts 20th place in the number 98 car. Outside the top 20, we continue to run the story on down. We do have a packed grid of 41 cars, and we do see in 21st place, it's going to be Stephen Donnelly for JSD Motorsports, ahead of Hendrik Zilka. From the Old Dudes in Cars Blue driver, we'll then have Helder Gonzalez for Tractix Racing, who really seems to be struggling in these qualifying sessions of late, ahead of Austin Graff for Axis Sim Sports. And on row 13, it will be Nathan Scott for Empire Motorsport, ahead of second place Evo starter of Richard White there for UK Sim Racing Mansell. So it definitely means that Weston's given himself a lot of breathing room to work with here today, and I think he'll be grateful for that. Richard Jones for Slow and Steady Racing starts 27th, ahead of Luke Sherlock, with the privateer being followed up there by Jordan Lee Jones for DWR Sim Coach Setups and UK Sim Racing Hills Edward Berry. Outside the top 30, we have 31st. It's going to be Cy Hartley, as somebody gets it quite wrong there. In fact, I think everyone queuing up by accident coming down the middle stretch, but Simon Hartley starts in 31st, ahead of Rob Windsor for UK Sim Racing Hill. And from the DWR Sim Coach Setups and UK Sim Racing Hill row, it's in the privateer and Old Dudes in Cars row of none other than what is there, Daryl Giacovelli and Daniel Pays. We then do have Noah Blackwell starting 35th for SRI7 Privateer Brian, ahead of Joel Loudon, his teammate. And then we do have on row number 37, it's going to be none other than Steve Hughes for UK Sim Racing Price, who's opted to start from the pit lane, as has Simon Hartley, interestingly. But Hughes would be joined on that row of the grid, 19th row, by Max Galgay for Split Strat Esports. The final full row of the grid will be contested by James Connolly for UK Sim Racing Hill and Alex Brown for Slow and Steady Racing. And last but not least, we then do have none other than Daryl Giacovelli, and I do believe it's his brother Darian, who's a bit further up the road. In fact, apologies for the misnaming of 2 drivers there, but it will be Daryl Giacovelli who starts last but not least. So the field is set, ladies and gentlemen, and as it makes its way back towards us now, we are only a couple of corners and a stretch away from going green flag racing here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And well, a circuit steepled in history, and with the old bricks still there on the start-finish line, in tribute to the fact that this circuit was originally constructed where road surface made entirely out of brickwork. It wasn't the most stable or grippy, but it got the job done. But today, can Joe Nathan get the job done from the front row of the field, or will Raz Harper take him all the way to distance? And what will happen between our pro drivers behind of none other than Furs versus Halsoy? Well, it's time to find out, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for 60 minutes of racing action here in round number 4 of the GT3 Championship. And it's lights out and away we go then for the best part of what will be 60 minutes of race as they roar the way away, and our drivers come charging down that start-finish straight, and as they do, well, everybody immediately on the attack here, albeit Joe Nathan under a little bit of pressure early on, and it does seem as though everybody else scurrying around, but Nathan in the end will take the place, and Raz Harper meanwhile trying to battle, but it's going to be Daniel Shilcock who stays close behind. Shilcock will flash of lights, and Harper gets it wrong coming through turn number 2, and it's going to be Shilcock who has to take the escape road there as it all goes wrong between them, but meanwhile everyone else manages to survive the drama, but Daniel Shilcock and Raz Harper definitely going sideways before they can get it on the straightaways, and that's going to be a very frustrating start between them. But all these drivers right now trying to get themselves back together as quickly as they possibly can, and a little bit further back Thomas Weston meanwhile, well, he's on the attack here as they make the way in towards what will be the next set of braking zones, but definitely a lot of surprises there to be certain as we get our clock up at the top left corner of your screen, and a bit further back we can see right now big scrambling between all of our classes drivers as they make the way through, and indeed right now it does seem as though there's a big shuffle going on inside the top 35 if not outside of it, but this is going to be side by side here between a couple of drivers. James Connolly battling side by side with Edward Berry, and Max Galgay trying to get involved there. The two UK SimRacing teammates getting on each other's toes, and well, they're going to continue to do so as Max Galgay right now makes it 3 wide for a brief moment, and when he manages to squeeze on through there, Moses manoeuvre and gets on through, as does Joel Loudon, who looks to make the opportunity, and Loudon today in the Ford Mustang, so he's decided to change up cars there, and well, very striking livery on the car, it must be said, but strange that we're not seeing him in the Aston Martin. And still the car change allowed, and therefore as they make the way through, it's a big mistake there, and that's going to be Rob Windsor going sideways, and Joel Loudon ends up going on the grass with him and takes evasive action. But after one lap of racing, well, Joe Nathan continues to lead, and right now seems to be trying to get into control of this race, as Christian Thursby in second place. Well, he's digging in deep here for the lead of the Pro class in second place overall. Richard Simnor's moved up to third, ahead of Christer Halsoy, followed by Yabi Sierra and Ryan Davies, who completes your run at the top 6. Ricardo Luis Perez, he's moved into lead of the Premier class, but will he be there for long? The good news is he's got Mikey Storey between him and Alan Lever, but Lever is the danger man for Luis Perez, and then we do have John Watts currently sitting in 10th place, and Watt is on a mission as well, and it does seem as though our top 3 in the Premier class, they've swapped places around with Watt losing 2, Lever and Luis Perez gaining 1, but all these drivers right now keeping their heads down, and knowing the race is far from done. Joe Sparrow, meanwhile, for JSD Motorsports, he's on the attack as well as he makes his way through the corners, and well, it does seem as though these drivers right now are absolutely on a mission to try and go on the attack as much as they can. Sparrow none more so because he wants to try and get one over Samuel Clark. We ride aboard here with the 5th place man in the Premier class right now, and well, his game plan will be to try and put Clark under absolutely huge pressure. Looks for the move, even into 90 right here at turn number 12. Can't quite find it, however, has to back off and await his turn, but trying to show his intent nice and early, and well, looking up the inside there even into turn 13, a corner you don't normally overtake at, just for the simple reason it's such a tight apex, but right now, well, Sparrow definitely looking every which way. He's got confidence in this Aston Martin, something that Clark may not have in that McLaren, and well, from round to round and week to week, definitely the balanced performance will cause some cars to be stronger than others, but that's what we love to see in GT3 class racing. It is a whole mixture of performance. Meanwhile, for return number 1, just off camera, Mikey Storey has tucked up the inside of Luis Perez, so he's now moved into 7th place overall, and unfortunately now it means that your Premier leader is going to find himself among his peers, because Alan Lever and John Watt are right there with him as they make the way through at turn number 4 and in towards 5 and 6. However, Luis Perez is no stranger to be under pressure, and this is going to be a good test for his driving abilities, as right now he's normally been the chaser, not the one being chased, but we'll have to see whether the shoe on the other foot's actually going to work to his advantage with Lever and Watt continue to watch on. Lever there takes a cheeky peek to the inside. I think just tried to say to Ricardo, look my friend, I'm here, don't worry about your braking zone, look at me, I'm the captain of this race right now, and in the end Luis Perez says, well, you can threaten me as much as you want, you're going to have to get a bit closer, otherwise we're both going to the steward's room and you're going to be put in the naughty corner for it if you go for a lunch. But looking a bit further back down the order, Daniel Payes, he's trying to make some progress, James Connolly with him there, and we have got some replays to come with some early incidents on the opening lap. Those replays coming up shortly, but meanwhile, speaking of short things here, well, it was a short-lived move from Richard Simnor in towards 2nd place at turn number 12, and Christian Furs has made his way back into 2nd place with Christer Halsoy watching on from behind. And the Tractics Racing driver right now is looking at this with bated breath and thinking, well, how on earth do I get involved? And the answer, simply put, for Christer Halsoy is he's just got to be a little bit more eager under braking here, I think. Alternatively, he's got to hope that Simnor can find a way through. And here comes Simnor up the inside again. Thursday doesn't outbrake himself. He nails it. And the battle of Ford versus Ferrari. It is the Ferrari that's holding on right now. And that was the story in Spain. And a story here again. Oh, goodness me. Richard Simnor almost loses it coming out turn number 2. Has to go defensive there through 3 into 4. Simnor right now being made to work hard. The rear tyres of that Ford Mustang absolutely spinning up, and in the end just about gets it locked back down again before Halsoy could go all the way around the outside. all these drivers come charging on, and as they do, well, we took a look back into what will be the Evo class, and this is Darian Giacovelli, who's had a very good start to this race, albeit he's going to lose one place there to Edward Berry, who goes around the outside of him, and well, as Edward Berry makes it happen, I wonder if he enjoys listening to Eminem. If anybody knows the reference there, you can let me know in the YouTube chat with regards to people going around the outside. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 7, Edward Berry right now, where he listens to rap metal or something in between, he's rapping along to the tune of what is some great progress here, and is looking to hunt down another spot on the podium now, and Jordan Jones is his next target, 1.2 seconds up the road as the long queue builds up, and Raz Harper is the anomaly in this queue, the man who started all the way up on the front row of the grid after a spin on the opening lap. He's now recovering, he's already back up into 26th place, but he'll be hoping he can do a bit more from here, as he's got a long way to go, and we're only 5 minutes into the race distance. But as time continues to accumulate, let's take a look back at some of the moments from early on in the race, and to do so, of course, we need to take a look at some replays, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It started off, of course, with what was the conclusion of the formation lap, and going green flag racing as Raz Harper parks up the car, damages the car, and he tows to the pit. I wonder what's going on there for Harper. Well, not quite sure, but something's broken, and well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we take a look back to the race start. Now, this was when we got green flag race, and our focus will be on Raz Harper for this initial race start to see what exactly went wrong. You can see Harper and also Nathan very close to each other. Joe Nathan, of course, naturally getting the advantage at the race start, as you would always expect. And as they made their way down into the braking zone for turn number 1, well, what exactly went wrong for Harper is the question. Well, we saw Furs look up the inside, but a bit too close, and in the end had to back off. They all scrambled. A tiny tap there from the Mercedes behind, but nothing too major from Shilcock. And as Harper came out of 1 into 2, too much of the apex curve at 3, upset the car and sent Shilcock out wide. And well, Shilcock tried to take evasive action, but unfortunately that evasive action did not work out for him whatsoever. And well, Shilcock was able to recover a little bit quicker by comparison, but definitely a frustrating start for both drivers there. We also did have this happen a little bit later on the open lap, I do believe, and this was, unless I'm mistaken, for James Connolly. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, for Connolly's misdemeanors on the open lap. Because Connie out wide through the chicane, and then he made his way in towards turn number 10, and we've got tapped on the rear there by looks of things from Max Galgay, who disappeared and then reappeared, so a little bit of a push to pass there potentially from Galgay, although that camera angle is not too flattering, to be fair, for us to be able to give critique, so therefore we'll give Galgay the benefit of the doubt. It may have been that Connie just outbroke himself there, and then subsequently the camera angle suggests that he made the contact to the rear of the front. It doesn't look as though there's any damage on the back of that, and well, Connie immediately tries to come back at the split track esports drive, only to find the 172 go sideways, and that was suddenly where it all went very, very wrong for Rob Windsor. And well, that explains a few stories there. And then we did have this towards the end of lap number 1. And this is Robin Powney taking a lot of grass down the final corner. Oh, no, 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 no. That's not where you want to go spinning around. I don't know how that BMW M4 managed to survive that contact. I'm trying to see which BMW that was. But Robin Powney there been spinning all the way around. And in the end, somehow, some way, manages to get it turned around. Not without whacking the concrete barrier on the centre of pit lane. And well, as a result, a nightmare moment there. But it could have been far, far worse. He survived that. And then we did have this on lap number 2. And this was Christian Maltrek, who was the one who contacted Robin Powney. And well, with that contact, the car was damaged. I think he'd already gone on at turn number 3 and decided to park the car up, the damage being infeasible to carry on racing. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's return to your live racing and carry on the story here at Indianapolis. So with all that and the craziness that's ensued, we come back to your racing, and in good time, of course, because we are now heading towards the end of the opening 10 minutes, and that can only mean one thing here as we stumble forward now into what will be the next portion of the race, is that we're going to start to see things calm down a little bit between drivers. We say hello to a good number of you in the YouTube chat there, including Send It Sim Racing, who says, "What's up?" and indeed, "What's up, good sir," to you. We also say hello to Edward Berry there, also to Jordan Lee Jones. I hope you guys are all doing well. Also to Glass Tech Racing, and they're here for the racing and the commentary, which is great to see. Also, we say hello there to Cryfuels, who says, "Get well soon." I can hear it, and indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for those curious, I am suffering from what has been some sort of flu or fever. It may even be COVID-19. I'm not quite sure what, but don't dwell on my health. I'm here, and the one thing that makes me happier more than medicine is commentating some absolutely fine racing. So this is the cure for me. And what is it they say? 5 broadcasts a day keeps the doctor away. Well, I'm definitely not up to that at the moment, but I can tell you one thing right now: 60 minutes of racing here in the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship, powered by SimRacing International, is definitely a huge amount of anaesthesia for the pain that I'm feeling. But as he roars around, we also say hello to James Bostock there, and we're doing everything we can there, and he's here to enjoy all the racing. But the racing is definitely getting interesting when it comes to the Premier class, because right now we definitely do see that Luis Pera, Lever and Watts, they're all still together. And our Porsche 992 driver put it on pole with Watt, who really put himself right up there compared to his rivals. Right now, I think he's feeling as though, what do I need to do to find a way through? And the answer really is for John. He's got to get a little bit more inventive here. Or 30, he's got to play the long game and think, right, if I can't beat them on circuit, let Lever and Luis Pera put each other under pressure. I just need to play the game of, I know I've got the upper hand when it comes to one lap pace. I proved it in qualifying, so now all I've got to do is keep pumping in the laps and making sure I save some fuel and tyre life, and then when the pit stop comes around, just leap them in the pits, or at least go on an offset strategy and be able to put in what effectively will be some qualifying laps. That's a lot easier said than done, to be fair. And also the one other thing you always have to consider, it's a bit of an unknown in qualifying, did the drivers in front of him currently botch their qualifying laps? Because we have heard multiple stories this season down the paddock where drivers had a lot of one lap pace in qualifying, only to find out that track limits have hit them hard, and it hasn't worked out there, as we do see a little bit of a sneaky peek from Watt to the inside of Lever, just trying to show what is a bit of an opportunity. But in the end, Lever does not flinch, he holds his line. So John Watt right now getting a little bit tempted. The little devil on his shoulder says to him, why don't you go for the move? But Helder Gonzalez behind says, I'm an even bigger devil, I'm not on your shoulder, I'm going to be on your backside here, and I'm going to be all over you like a bad rash. Albeit Gonzalez being patient for now, but understandably something tells me that Gonzalez's patience will only last so long. As Watt takes another look up the inside of Lever there into turn 13, I think we're going to see a bit of a domino effect here shortly, ladies and gents. But I would imagine that if Watt can't make a move happen, Gonzalez is going to look for the move. It's going to come down to temperament and time. And, well, let's wait and see what happens here between these guys. But Gonzalez definitely showing signs that he's not willing to wait forever. And the elite top four are definitely putting away little by little. As Watt looks up the inside, Lever slightly pulls off racing line. And Gonzalez there gets contacted by Watt. Now, did Gonzalez dive down the outside and Watt squeezed him to the wall? That all happened in very short order. We'll have to get a replay of that when we can, but definitely Gonzalez coming off the worst of the two, and I think, well, both drivers there will have their own opinion, but Gonzalez makes his way to the gravel. So whatever's happened, it's damage to the car, and Gonzalez, that's going to be very quickly a tow to the pits there, because something's gone very wrong, and I can imagine that initial contact's broken something, and subsequently as he's tried to get up to speed into turn number 3, the car's just completely snapped on him, and Watt carries on completely unabated, and Lever and Luis Pera move on like it never happened. Meanwhile, speaking of things that are happening a little bit further down the order, well, the Evo class is definitely getting intriguing as well, because Loudon all over the back of Galgay right now, and then Brown is 2.5 seconds back for Slow and Steady Racing. And I had the opportunity to catch up with the Slow and Steady Racing team in person over this weekend just gone. Unfortunately, Alex wasn't there as part of the big commune, but I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, and absolutely a brilliant team there with drivers from all around the world, from the United States all the way to Japan. And right now, the Briton here enjoying his race in the BMW M4 Evo and looking to very slow and steadily move his pace forward in this Evo class there, to use the team name in a proper sentence. But as he does so right now, he won't feel as though this is a sentence, he'll feel as though this is a pleasure of just continuing to represent the brand and push on as best as he can. But back to Darren Giacovelli we go, and the reason we want to talk a little bit about him, not because he's missing a front bumper, although that's not how a McLaren 720S Evo should look, but that's because Jordan Jones looks for a move here, and Giacovelli under a bit of pressure. I wonder if he's lost that front bumper recently, but Jones goes around the outside, a lovely sweeping move there for the DWR with SimCoach setups driver, and he enables himself now to move into the top 3 of the Evo class, at least for now. Richard White's going to be the man who looks to pounce, and well, Darren Giacovelli's looking vulnerable here. I can imagine with the absence of a front bumper, White's not going to be too far away from trying to look for a move up the inside, and Giacovelli may not fight this one too hard, will the Swaziland driver, although I say that he goes all in on the brakes there, does Giacovelli. My good lord, he manages to get it stopped in time, puts himself between the two drivers, and in the end Richard White does find his man and goes around the inside to outside approach. But Giacovelli there definitely showed he could be late on the brakes. That required Jones to be very alert to what was going on, and I think right now that may have been necessitated by the damage to the car, as Max Galgay tries to fight a way through, but he doesn't quite find it there. The split track esports driver has to lift off the throttle for a brief moment, but as he builds up the speed once again, well, surely it's got to come here into turn number 7. If he doesn't go for it now, when will he go for it? And the answer is he does go for it now. Well, Giacovelli went to turn in there and suddenly saw the McLaren on his inside and said, okay, you know what, you've made your apex, I'm not going to fight this any further. But speaking of fighting, we've been fighting the urge to make our way back in time to a replay, but here we go, ladies and gentlemen, because this is a replay of the Gonzalez Watt incident down into turn number 1, and well, what exactly happened? So this was heading down into braking here. Now, Watt pulled to the inside to look for a potential move, and in the end, a very odd moment there. It looked as though Gonzalez had made the braking zone absolutely fine, and the rear of the car just snapped loose for him. Now, was there contact or not? It's very hard to tell from that angle. Can we get on board with one of the drivers? We'll start, I think, with Gonzalez. This was his on board. Let's just listen in. So a tiny tap there, if anything where what came back across to cover off the racing line as the Track 6 racer tried to go around the outside. That contact tiny, but understandably the repercussions quite sizable. Can we get that from Watt's perspective? And the answer is yes, we can. Let's listen in. It sounds as though there was a tiny bit of contact between you. You have to listen very closely to potentially hear it. But so it is the tiniest of taps, but at those speeds, and with the wall on the other side, Gonzalez's car, understandably, I think, taking a huge amount of damage for such a minor tap, if there was contact. But definitely there. Watt coming back across to cover off the line. Gonzalez tried to go down the outside to go round the outside into the inside of turn number 2. But a very interesting one between those two tries. Indeed, I don't think it's going to be an easy one if it goes to the stewards, for the stewards to unpick, just because of how that all played out. But let's go back to your live racing. And as we do, we come back to Max Galgay for a brief moment before we do leave him. And as he continues to roll his way on around there, well, definitely it's not been without drama so far here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And, well, Sam Clark in the YouTube chat we say hello to says, that's a man who doesn't always miss the front bumper, in reference to what was the heroics earlier on of Darren Giacovelli, and an absolute send. But to be fair, brilliant send it was. And, well, in other words, if it had worked out, we'd be talking about as well the legendary pass of the season, but it didn't quite work out there. And instead, it was one of those moments where 3 Evo drivers definitely demonstrated all of their technical ability and their awareness of each other. But as we come back to the racing, we look back to the overall standings. And it's Mikey Storey right now, who is in a good run of form in the 2-1-4. And as he comes roaring on through the corner there of turn number 11 in towards 12. Well, right now, he's currently the 3rd place pro driver here, but it's very odd to see that right now your top 7 alternates between elite and pro, which we typically do expect to see, to be fair. Your elite drivers normally being a couple of tenths faster than your pros, and vice versa, pros to premiers, and then premiers to evos, and naturally it creates a good couple of seconds gap between the elite drivers and the evo drivers from circuit to circuit. It's very circuit dependent. Longer circuit scores, the time gap is normally a lot greater, or the more technical circuit perhaps, that's where the time gap becomes greater. But the point is right now we do have elites and pros exchanging paint, exchanging places as if it's going out of style. But speaking of going out of style here, John Watt definitely has not changed his fashion, albeit he's going to look around the outside as Lever finally goes defensive for the first time here, coming down in towards turn number 1. Watt's still looking for it. He's going to squeeze his way to the apex of turn number 2. They rub door to door, but as they're coming out, they're great racing route given by both drivers, and Watt in the end on the outside in towards turn number 3. He looks to the switchback here through 4. Can he get it? And the answer is no. Lever right now having to really defend hard as we look back from the rear of the UKSimRacing Mansell car. And we're right now close, but not close enough is the story of Watt's attempt, but heading all the way down towards turn number 7. Can he look for it here? Lever puts it in the middle of the road, knowing it's a very wide straight. In fact, you can use the runoff area there. Watt's going to look around the outside. Does he outbrake himself? And the answer is not quite. Watt's still alive. He's still there. He manages to make it onto the circuit just about. That shows you how much confidence Watt has in the brakes of that Porsche 992. Indeed, very strong brakes on that car. Some of the strongest out in the GT3 class currently. But Alan Lever right now in this Lamborghini Huracan Evo is not giving in an inch whatsoever. And right now, Ricardo Luis Pereira could be on course for his first win of the season if these two continue to fight and take all the tyre life and fuel out of their respective cars. But we will see whether that's going to be really the story of the race, as there's a big queue growing behind. Casper Brotner and Daniel Schilcock, 2 elite drivers, who are getting right on the back of this now. They're watching. There is Brotner in the BMW M4, and Schilcock is only a couple of further tenths behind, albeit he has a lot more visibility of this one because he's got a 4/10 gap to the back of Brotner's car, so therefore he's playing the watching game. But Lever goes defensive once again to the inside of the road. Watt this time looks to the outside again, but what can he do differently this time is the question, and the answer is he decides to back it off early rather than go all in side by side through here, because he knows that Lever's going to hold on to it as well as he possibly can. This is definitely adding a bit of intrigue between these two, and we'll have to see what comes next, because understandably, much like what we did see earlier on for Helder Gonzalez, one would imagine that Casper Brotner right now will have some patience, but how long will his patience go when he's got Daniel Schilcock for close company, and Sight Anti and Darren Sharples? They've both knocked on the door and said, can we play, guys? And, well, everyone wants to play right now, but it's getting very interesting as that's one look, then the other. Daniel Schilcock left, right and centre. Meanwhile, Watt and Lever come into contact there, under braking. It looks so side by side. It's side by side between Schilcock and Brotner, and then Sight Anti makes it 3 wide. Surely not. He does. He goes 3 wide, takes both places, and suddenly they all return to order, but not about Stephen Donnelly getting involved, and also Sharples My good lord, that sequence there of 3 corners, we're going to need to get a replay of that to see how they all swapped and changed places, but it's not over yet because Watt's up the inside here and lever into turn number 12. He's going to get it under braking is Watt. He will finally get this move done, but this fighting has cost them both so much time, and Luis Pereira right now being the best part of 4.5 seconds up the road, but John Watt finally takes second place off of Alan Lever, but my good lord, he had to throw everything at that, plus take some grass with him out the final quarter as they go on to lap number 15, and Lever right now is still there with him, albeit not ready to fight this time, but somehow they all survived it. St. Anthony has just snuck all the way through into 11th place and what was 15th at the start of that sequence, and Daniel Shilcock somehow got ahead of Casper Rotner, but not without putting Darren Sharples between the two of them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to need at least 3 or 4 replays of every different perspective on that, because that was absolute madness. I don't know how they all survived that. Well done to everybody involved, but that is not normally how you see 2x2x2 play out here at Indianapolis. It's normally close, but that close, oh, well, I think right now we've definitely got about 6 or 7 nominees for overtakes on moments of the season all in one go, if we are doing awards like that this season. But as they all make the way down, well, we do see what is Stephen Donnelly getting a little bit closer to the back of Casper Brotner. But one driver who might be looking at this right now, he's 4th place in Premier and thinking, okay, I'm getting a bit closer, is Samuel Clark. Because if we look to the class standings, one thing you may notice is the fact that whereas about 6 or 7 laps ago, Clark was the best part of approximately 10 seconds off the back of Watt and Lever before they started battling. Now, he's only 3.5 seconds, if that, off the back of them. So Samuel Clark might be looking at this. He may have a spotter looking for him, and the spotter might be saying to him, Sam, keep in mind, they've been fighting so much in front of you. We know that you've got several other classes drivers in front, but you've just gained a huge amount of time. Keep working the strategy, or they may say to him to start to save more fuel and also save your tyres. He may have an opportunity to leapfrog his way into position here if Clark's really thinking about the bigger picture, and the team are thinking about the bigger picture at Dexterous Motorsports. And if I know Dexterous Motorsports, they definitely are looking at timing on circuit now, as we are 20 minutes into this race. But 16th lap is now being turned, and all the way back at the field, we always like to talk a little bit about it, is the Pennzoil racing machine of Luke Sherlock as it tucks in behind Joe Sparrow. These two, of course, they have made pit stops already. I do believe for damage to their cars. We will try and get a replay of what's happened to them. We've also had an incident for Max Galgay. We have definitely got an absolute manic number of moments to try and take a look back. But before we do any of that, we also need to look to some other drivers here who are enjoying themselves, including Jones, Zilka and Graf. The Premier class is really delivering here today in the US of A, it must be said. All the classes are, they always do, but Premier seems to be the right heat point of all the fighting. And hold up a second, Christian Furs has dropped all the way down from the lead of the Pro class. Something's gone wrong for Furs. I think he's got it wrong coming out to turn number 10 into 11, and the Ferrari driver has relinquished the leader Pro, and with it, second place overall to Christer Halsoy, who's moved up to 3rd. Richard Simnor squeezed his way on through. So right now it's the top 2 of Elite, and then Halsoy now leads the Pro class. But let's get some replays as to what's happened there, ladies and gentlemen. And here we go. And we start with the most recent moment, which was Christian Furs. What went wrong for him from the Pro lead? So this was Furs. He was by himself at the time, ran out wide, just going out the corner. Oh my goodness. And in the end went spinning on around, let the car roll backwards to the grass. That was very well calculated there from him. I think if he decided to put the brakes on, he would have rolled right back into the middle of the road, and then it would have been everybody for themselves with regards to trying to take evasive action. So that was very smart car control and split decision making there from Christian Furs. May have lost 2 places, but he hasn't lost his race and hasn't cost anybody else their race. We then had this, of course, a little bit earlier on between John Watt and Alan Lever. And this was the absolute madness that played out in their fight for none other than second place in the Premier class. Where it all ended at this point, it should be said. And this was into turn number 12, where Watt finally got up the inside and made the magic happen. But behind, we saw some absolute craziness from the likes of Shilcock and company. Can we get a replay of that? Yes, we can, because that was what completed his move, a classic move there. But how it started was definitely a bit of a different story. And here we go. This was Daniel Shilcock getting involved. Looked one way, then the other versus Casper Brotner. What made contact with Lever in the foreground? This was Shilcock on the back of Brotner. They made contact coming out the corner. I'm not sure if Brotner there lost the rear of the car and went into the side of Shilcock the other way. And St. Anthony just rubbed paint with both of them and said, see you later, guys. I've got a place to take off of you. So St. Anthony there being very cheeky. In fact, can we get the on board with St. Anthony? I think we might be able to here. Watch this. So he'll see that Shilcock and Brotner are fighting in front. He thinks, okay, guys, well, what's going to go wrong exactly? So Shilcock did make contact with Brotner. That triggered Brotner going slightly sideways. And St. Anthony snuck up the inside, gambled it for the biscuit. And in the end, well, it definitely was an absolutely lovely digestive he got to bite himself down on there, because he digested those places as quickly as that. And St. Anthony snuck on through there. And that was absolute cinnabar between all the drivers. Unfortunately, we also did have this on lap number 13. This was Cinema for Max Galgay. It all went wrong for him in a very short order. This was turn number 4, got too much apex curb, and the car went spinning around there. So it's a bit of a frustrating one for the 006 driver, but it does happen every so often. And we also had this for Joe Sparrow on the same lap as Galgay. He was at the time chasing after the machine there of none other than Luke Sherlock, making their way on through the right-hander there. That was at turn number 12 into 11, and well, in the end ran out to the grass, but thankfully brought it back on and, well, lost a little bit of pace there. So let's come back to live racing, ladies and gentlemen. More to come, but in fact, we have seen plenty, and, well, we come back to racing, which definitely is now starting to build up to a bit more of a mid-race crescendo. And as we come on back, well, your racing continues, and we are now at 35 minutes remaining here. More laps continue to trickle on, but the moments continue to come. And right, we come back to what is the battle for second place here in the Pro class. This is Storey versus Furs. Christian Furs right now after his spin, where it hasn't let him dampen his spirits as we jump on board the Panda Spit Motorsports 297 Ferrari. And well, he'll be looking for a mean of trying to get through. However, Storey's not going to just simply sit there idly and let this place go. I can imagine right now in his mind, it'll be he knows that Furs is the fastest driver. He's proven that over the opening 20 minutes. And, well, minus a spin, Furs really is the man to beat in the Pro class, at least when it comes to pace. But on the track, it'll be Christer Halsoy who's the man to beat. He's 3.5 seconds up the road from the pair of them. But Furs, as close as he may be, he's not close enough to consider ascend at this point, and Storey will be looking to maintain that gap at what is half a second, and that will give him a bit of breathing room and a bit of comfort to be able to operate this more and more as they go into the distance. Through the right-hander return at number 11 they come, and as they do, we can see that gap staying stationary at the moment. No real change. Just in front of them, well, is Ryan Davis and none other than the Empire Motorsport Ford Mustang, an absolutely beastly machine for an absolutely brilliant livery. And right now, the third place elite driver in a bit of a lonely world versus what is his peers in the Pro class behind him. But back to the front of the Premier class, a little bit further down the order, what we do have here, the Aston Martin and Ricardo Luis Pereira. That is doing an absolutely fantastic job right now of holding its position. And, well, goes around the outside there, Yavi Sierra, who I think has a slowdown penalty that he's serving there, albeit, well, I think he might have left it a bit too late to serve it earlier on that end of the lap. So therefore, he's had to serve it suddenly in a braking point where he's broken on the start for the straight. Well, you might be sat there thinking, isn't that going to cost him more time than the penalty would normally cost him? And the answer is, yes, it will, just because he'll have blunted the best part of what will be at least 10 to 15 miles an hour top speed coming into that turn 1 braking zone. But in the end, he does manage to hold on to 8th place off of John Watt, who's now right behind him. From them, we make our way back to your leader in the Evo class. We haven't really talked about him too much since the start of the race. He started off in pole position of the class, and since then he hasn't looked back. Thomas Weston here, and, well, Thomas Weston definitely has had a first 3 rounds of the season that have been incredibly lively, some would say. Others would use other adjectives to describe it. Brash might be one of them, bold might be another, but I can tell you one thing, it doesn't matter who he finds on the circuit, he loves fighting with them. And to be fair, that definitely goes to show you he's got plenty of pluck and fighting spirit as the number 98 driver, and that's what you do need to become a champion. But we did see, particularly at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalonia last time out, that whereas in the first 2 rounds he seemed to be picking a fight with everybody who came up around him, particularly in Mexico, he's definitely reined that in, and it worked out very well for him until a bit of late race drama, unfortunately, cost him what could have been the guaranteed win in Spain, albeit some would say that was not his fault, and I'm inclined to agree. And right now for Thomas Weston, this is definitely looking to be a win that is heading his way, albeit, of course, I've sung his praises, and I don't want to put the commentator's curse on him because he's still got 32 minutes plus a final lap of this race to go. But right now, for Weston, he's definitely got his head down here, and this is the Thomas Weston that we do love to see go racing. But onwards he goes, all over the back of Samuel Clark at this point, and the 4th place Premier driver, we look at his rear view mirrors and thinking, okay, I've got a McLaren getting close, it's Weston, do I just simply let him go? And, well, Clark understandably may be inclined not to let him go because he's quite close to leather. Meanwhile, coming out of the pit lane, that's a Ferrari of James Connolly that's just served the pit stop, albeit Connolly is now effectively a lap down here, so Connolly won't want to step on the toes of the drivers who are on the lead lap whatsoever. That goes to show you just how much time has been lost by Connolly with the earlier incidents, and the fact that his race has gone from good to bad, but it's not quite disastrous yet as he tries to bring himself back into this one. But Hendrik Zilka, meanwhile, he's under a bit of pressure from Austin Graff. They're fighting over 6th place in Premier, with Richard Jones still keeping them at arm's length. Although, understandably, Jones will be looking in his rearview mirrors and wondering what's happening next. Graf, meanwhile, is only looking for one thing, and that's a place. And right now, the Axis Sim Sport Ferrari, lovely livery on the car, and he's looking for a lovely move, but he can't quite find it. And we'll be trying to keep it pretty as long as he can. As more pit stops are playing out, and we do have Richard White coming in from the Evo class, and also Casper Brotner is coming in. So we are right in the throes of pit stop season right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more before this lap is over. Coming to the end of their lap, well, Rowan Powney and Luke Sherlock, I should say, head down towards turn number 1. And right now, the Pennzoil BMW with under pressure on the Sim Coach Corvette. And, well, the one and only Corvette on this grid today on its home circuit, the Corvette Z06 GT3R. And Powney definitely enjoying the car. That does seem to be a little bit of an interesting mishmash between what is a V8 in the back, and where you'd be inclined to think that we've got a bit of American muscle, much like the Ford Mustang, but then you've got a body that is very similar to the Ferrari 296. And that's intentional, with this Corvette being the first ever mid-engined racing car Corvette, having deviated from the C7R GT3 machine of previous years. But right now, for Powney, he's definitely trying to make it work, as that's a tap on the rear, and that is going to be none other than Ryan Davies going up the inside there. And I think Davies trying to send a message, which is, can you politely step aside? And, well, Mikey Storey is going to use that as an opportunity to also squeeze his way through. And, well, if you sat there wondering why is Powney not just simply stepping aside and letting them go, he doesn't have to be fair. The blue flag race rules do say that the lead lap driver, or the faster driver essentially, needs to facilitate the pass, and, well, it's the responsibility of the lap down, or the slower driver, if you will, just to simply not make any unpredictable movements. They can hold the race line. When the lead lap driver does get alongside, the expectation is that is when the lap down driver at that point lets it go and does not put up a fight. As they come roaring through right now, well, 2 different laps, these 2 different drivers, but still they're both pushing onwards here as we head into the second half of the race distance. But back to the front of the field, and here we see Joe Nathan right now. He's in a bit of a lonely lead by 7 seconds over Richard Simnor, but right now the Rage Against the Game esports driver is definitely in control of this race, and he's looking to try and make it back-to-back wins. And Richard Simnor, once again, it will feel as though this is Spain 2.0, with the fact that he is the second place man. Albeit right now he's not able to catch up with Nathan, and the problem is this time he hasn't got the leading position going into the pit stop. He is the chaser, and with a sizable gap that he's trying to work down, well, Simnor is matching Nathan lap for pace, but the problem is, with that gap, if he's able to match him, he's going to need to find a way to outpace him. And, well, if you do the quick mathematics here, with 28 minutes to go, plus a final lap, well, it does mean we are looking at the best part of what will probably be at least another 20 laps. And, well, if he's able to take 2 or 3 tenths out, that's not going to be enough. He really needs to try and find half a second from somewhere if he can, or he needs an absolute magical pit stop, or for Nathan to have the worst pit stop of his season so far. But, of course, that's wishful thinking, and that comes down to Lady Luck. Something that's not always on the side of a driver, because Lady Luck gives and also she takes. And right now, will Richard Simnor take all the luck he can get if he can find some. But as he heads on through, no sign of a pit stop there. Indeed, all of our leaders, everybody inside what is the top 20, refusing to come into the pits of the boat. And as soon as I say that, well, Simon Hartley does have 1 pit stop registered, but that's where I believe he started from the pit lane in the earlier stage of this race. So right now, the DWO Sim Coach Setups driver yet to take what is his formal pit stop, and he's just keeping his head down here and doing a good job of moving up through the order into 4th place currently of the Evo drivers. As soon as I say that the top 20 have yet to wilt into the pits, well, they walk their way down now. Christian Furr's in, as is Yavi Sierra, Sight Anthony, and Thomas Weston, who you see in the rear of the picture there. And, well, they're all been listening right now, even though we're looking at something that's happened in the past. They've definitely been listening to the commentary as they all head on down pit lane. But meanwhile, not going down pit lane yet. Here's Hendrik Zilker with Austin Graf for close company. Graf decides to go for it this time. I think he was looking to try and fake a move, but then got so close he decided to try and send it. But Zilker in the end saw what was coming and said to the Ferrari driver, you better be ready to stop, because I'm going to turn into this apex. And Zilker in the end called the bluff, and Graf absolutely spot on there. But right now the Ferrari driver trying to look for a poke, but in the end it's not quite a successful one. He's having to wait his turn. Jordan Jones, he takes the lead of the Evo class, with the rest of the Evo class now seemingly coming into the pits, or at least the top 5 of the Evos, albeit Simon Hartley is yet to pit as well, so he's staying out there a little bit longer. But Jordan Jones right now, it's a 1-2 for DWR with Sim Coach setups, at least on the road. However, that 1-2 may not be the reality when all strategy is done, but I think Jones will be very happy to at least lead 1 lap of this race, and I think Hartley will be very happy to know that his strategy is working out, it is moving him forward and keeping him out of trouble. Back to the Haribo machine, and well, right now Stephen Donnelly, he's all over the back of Alan Lever, albeit Donnelly has yet to pit. Meanwhile, Lever has pitted, I do believe, so therefore 2 contrasting fortunes of the 2 drivers here on 2 different strategies. And David Scott, he's right there behind. But through turn number 4 they come. Thomas Weston has come out behind them. So Weston right now, the man who was the Evo leader before he pitted, he does have a comfortable gap over Edward Berry, who has pitted as well. So Berry is the best part of 15 seconds behind. But I think Weston will be keeping in mind the fact that his confidence can't become misplaced here. So he's definitely going to want to try and clear these drivers or hurry them up a little bit if he wants to guarantee that he'll return to the lead of the Evo class before this race is done. Back to the very front of the field, where we do look to Christer Halsoy. Currently your leader in pro, second overall, and much like the elite leader Joe Nathan, who's up the road, he yet to pull into the pits. Meanwhile, Richard Simnor has come into the pits. He's decided to take his pit stop, and here he is leaving pit lane, makes his way down the pit exit road there, which is very clearly denoted by the thick white line, and it is on the inside of turn number 1, so there's no risk of being ejected out onto the racing line, not until he clears the pit exit line there going into turn number 2, and well, Richard Simnor gives himself all the space in the world, perfectly operates that pit stop. And you couldn't ask better there for the DCW racing team. They exactly know how to get a pit stop right each and every time. And Simnor right now back into 3rd place in the lead. But we believe that is effectively 2nd place when Ryan Davies comes in. And Joe Nathan's into the pit lane, as is Ryan Davies in the rear of the picture. Christer Halsoy, meanwhile, in the Aston Martin, he decides to go another lap here. So he's been able to make that fuel tank just go a little bit longer, as has Mikey Storey. And you have to excuse me for coughing off microphone there, ladies and gentlemen. But as our drivers come on through, well, right now, Halsoy and Storey definitely trying to go longer. Sharples as well. So here's our pro drivers here, who've been able to make those fuel tanks go the longest of everybody. And sometimes they also bring a surprise. And Samuel Clark as well. Now, what's the Dexterous Motorsport Premier driver thinking here? Championship leader. He wants to try and make sure he continues an uninterrupted run of podium since the very start of the season. He's gone the longest of everyone in Premier class. Luis Pereira, Zilka and Gruff are all in the pit lane. We also did have earlier pit stops for Watt and also Lever, so it'll be interesting to see where they all intermingle with each other. Where is John Watt right now? Well, here he is, coming out of turn number 12 in towards 13. Finds a little bit of traffic, but to be fair, we do see there that Shark does step aside, doesn't get in the way, and does everything he can to respect the lead lap racing. But here comes Watt then through the final corner. Luis Perez leaving the pit lane. Where is Ricardo? There he is, and we look to the blimp camera. I think he's going to be absolutely clear here of Watt, and he's going to build himself back up to speed now as he makes his way in towards turn number 1 on that inside line. Here comes Watt. So Watt will come back out, head of Zilka. Zilka heads across the pit limiter line, and behind him is Austin Graff. So there's a change of position, where we see Alan Lever making his way on down. So Hendrik Zilka in the end does not take the place of Alan Lever. He comes out a little bit further behind. We will see his target, and Zilka has gained that time, and Richard Jones is just behind there. So pit stop wise, Ricardo Luis Pereira does seem to have got things right, but of course the one thing we've got to consider is coming into the pit lane now. Here is Samuel Clark as well, as he makes his way down. So from the lead of the Premier class, at least on circuit, we don't believe on strategy, has he been able to leap his way ahead of the likes of Lever, perhaps even get into parity with Watt? Well, we're going to find out very soon, because we're not too far away from seeing where he's going to come on out. Meanwhile, Nathan Scott versus Stephen Donnelly, these two still together, as we do see a little bit of a wobble there coming through turn number 7 into 8-9 for Scott. I wonder if that was a bit of power oversteer there, and he just had to overcorrect the car. Thomas Weston is still right behind the 6th and 7th place pro drivers here, keeping them honest and giving them a little bit of encouragement to go slightly faster, as all good Evo drivers will do. But meanwhile, we do look back to the front of the field. Richard Simnor returns to 2nd. Christer Halsoy leaves the pit lane just ahead of Mikey Storey. And Storey, in fact, has gained in the pits there. He's gained the best part of 2 seconds over Halsoy. So that's quite a noticeable difference between the two of them. But here comes Ricardo Luis Pereira. He comes back into the lead then of the Premier class. Here's Watt making his way on down. Where is Samuel Clark? Well, Samuel Clark has just left the pit limiter line. Where is Alan Lever? Lever's not too far behind here. I think Clark has got this done. I think Clark's going to move into 3rd. Yes, he is, because Lever is all caught up here between Donnelly and Scott and Weston. There's not ways. He's just had contact as well. And Lever's race goes around and down into the grass as quickly as that. And the UKSimRacing driver will be absolutely fuming at that one after the small tap from Nathan Scott. I don't think there was any malice meant. I think it was a miscalculation under braking into turn number 2. And Alan Lever's race now has been demoted behind Zilka, Jones and Graff there. So he's suddenly down into 7th place. The Premier class driver, he will not be pleased about that at all. And right now his luck has taken the turn for the worse. It went wrong in Spain, and now it's gone wrong again here in the US of A. Can he have a happy day? Well, right now it seems as though if he wants a happy day, he's got 21.5 minutes to try and rectify everything that's gone wrong. But that's going to be an uphill battle. And he's now got the best part of what is a 6-second gap between himself and full place man Hendrik Zilka, but he has got Jones and Graff to pass along the way. It's all Premier drivers, so it'll be for position now for Alan Lever all the way to the finish. But as he brings himself back up to speed, we may get a replay of what happened there very shortly. As meanwhile, Simon Hartley, well, with his strategy of going longer than most Evo drives, he's actually moved himself back into 5th place in the Evo class. He looks like the inside of Premier Top 10 driver of James Connolly. He can't quite find it there in turn number 7, however, and opts to stay behind for now, with Joel Loudon being 6.5 seconds behind, and then Matt Scalgay being another 15 off. We do say hello there to Sakura566, who's cheering on at Sam Clark as always. We'll ask it earlier on, did they miss anything in the opening 15 laps? And, well, you definitely did miss a bit of pandemonium and chaos, to be fair, in the opening 15 laps, with some brilliant battles as well. Perhaps the most epic moment, of course, being the battle between John Watt and Alan Lever for 2nd place in the Premier class at the time, which definitely has cemented 2nd place for John Watt so far in this race, but it's also given Samuel Clark an opportunity to get a bit closer, as Daryl Giacomelli there get it very wrong in towards turn number 12, returns to the circuit at turn number 13, and in the end, what an easy mistake to make there for the privateer Porsche, and will gets himself all back on the circuit and will try to get the dirt off the tyres as quickly as he can. As he settles on down, well, right now 20 minutes left to go in this race, and it does look as though things are settling down quite nicely here. All the run up towards the very end, with Joe Nathan right now comfortably leading by 7.4 seconds over Richard Simnor. The elite leaders have definitely pulled away from the rest of the field, with then Christer Halsoy currently your 3rd place overall, but he is your pro class leader there. But Mikey Storey is staying with him for the most part. That last lap, Halsoy was half a second faster, but Storey does have the benefit of the draft, and also he may right now be needing to do a little bit of fuel save just to guarantee he can attack later in the race. A bit of tactics might be played here for Storey. Whereas Ryan Davies, 1.1 seconds behind him, the 3rd place elite driver you see in the back of the picture. And then we do have Christian Furs, who needs to try and recover his race because he was leading until that early mistake. Well, right now, the 3rd place pro driver here is closing. He is the fastest of the pro drivers by a couple attempts a lap. Can he get close enough before the end of it? Because he is currently 6 seconds behind Storey. But I think he'll fancy his chances if he can keep delivering this pace all the way to the checkered flag. But through turn number 7, in towards 8 he goes, and as he does, we then come to your Evo leader here, and here is Thomas Weston, who continues to annoy the rear of Nathan Scott. I mean that in a positive way, and the fact he's absolutely clinging to the back of your 7th place pro driver here, and Weston right now knowing he doesn't need to pass him, because Edward Berry by comparison is 17 seconds behind, and Berry is not closing on Weston at the moment. So Thomas Weston definitely does have the Evo pace today to make sure he takes this win, but now he's just got to keep it together for the remaining distance of this race, which easier said than done for any driver out there. Indeed, drama can happen at any moment at Indianapolis, and well, it normally does at any point in the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship. Haven't covered it for the best part of the last 3 years. It's not over until we see that checker flag, and that's definitely what you've probably seen in the intro video as well, with some of the most titanic moments being captured there. And a big thank you, of course, to Matt Edmondson for all those years ago putting that brilliant intro video together. But from talking about our intro, and right now a driver who seems to be cruising to the Evo win, to a driver who's definitely had to fight for Evo's 2nd place quite hard. Here's Edward Berry, and right now the UKSimRacing Hill driver makes his way on through to number 13, and when he's had to make his way from 4th in class from qualified all the way up to 2nd, it hasn't been an easy conquest for him, but he's now got himself the best part of what is a 10-second gap to the 3rd place man of Jordan Jones. And conversely, Jordan Jones, he's absolutely delivered this on the strategy. When the longest of all the Evo drivers kept his head down, kept out of trouble, much like teammate Simon Hartley, and that's how he's been able to sneak his way back into 3rd when it all seems to be going in the backwards direction. But it was all part of the master plan, which was just save the fuel, keep the pace, and therefore you'll inherit places over the distance of the race. But in terms of battling that might be coming up soon, well, we do look to the battle for 7th place in the Evo class. This is Brown versus Galgay, with Galgay just a 10th up the road from him at the moment. So Alex Brown, he's trying to chase down 7th place in the class with what has been one of his better performances today, as we do see Matt Galgay there stepping aside. Well, that's interesting. I wonder there whether he's interpreted or misinterpreted some blue flags, because there is Christian Furs looking to make his way past Alex Brown, but Galgay there, unless he's made a mistake and we're not quite aware of it, in fact he may have done so, because it did seem as though he stepped off circuit for a brief moment there. Well, Brown has inherited that place off of Galgay with that error, but now Galgay will be back on the attack as he heads down towards turn 1, and we ride on board. But for the 006 split strat esports driver here, he does love the chase. We did see that earlier on in the season, particularly that brilliant opening podium that he was able to take. As we briefly lose him, and he rematerialises from the ether. But Galgay right now on a mission here to try and claim that place back, and just getting caught out by turn number 12. Several drivers have done so today, and he won't want to get caught out too many more times, because otherwise he'll be at risk of losing the chase and the scent of Alex Brown's BMW. But as he heads down towards turn number 7, we'll leave them there for a brief moment. We'll perhaps come back a little bit later to see exactly how they conclude their battle. But from them, we come back up the order. And we look to Nathan Scott, who now, well, Stephen Donnelly was close behind him earlier on in the fight for 14th overall, but it does seem as though these two pro drives right now have settled a little bit, and it's going to be Stephen Donnelly who's there with him, 6 steps behind, but Donnelly doesn't seem to be showing any signs at the moment, at least, of being able to try and put a move on. But tyre wear is always a consideration, albeit here at Indianapolis, the tyre wear is perhaps not as aggressive as other circuits, particularly we saw at the circuit of Barcelona, Catalonia last time out. The tyre wear definitely was a big factor up and down the field over the race distance. The left-hand side tyres taking a beating, and the right-hand side tyres as well taking some quite severe wear at certain points on the lap. Around here, where it is a clockwise circuit, so left-hand side tyres do more work than the right-hand side. However, the amount of high and low corners around here is significantly less. The only real high load corners you do have are turns 3 and 4, and also at the run through at turn 12 and 14. But otherwise, for the most part, the tyres are not quite as strained compared to some other venues we've raced at this season, and that's why I think we are going to see the lap time stay relatively consistent. As Western, meanwhile, looks like the inside of Donnelly. And the Evo drive moves into 15th place. Well, Stephen Donnelly there saw it coming. I think Weston did flash his lights to be there to send a message to Donnelly, which is I'm coming for you. And when the end, Stephen Donnelly doesn't fight it too hard. I think Donnelly right now might be realising that Ford Mustang hasn't really got much more to give at this point. It may have plateaued in its race pace, and therefore he may as well let Weston go and not cost himself any time. Hendrik Zilke, he does have a fellow Premier driver right behind him, the former Luke Sherlock. Unfortunately for him, or in fact, fortunately I should say, or unfortunately for Luke Sherlock, Sherlock is a lap down, so therefore he's not going to be in a position whereby he's going to be under threat of a pass. But meanwhile, hold up a second, that is Cy Anthony pointing in the wrong direction. Anthony has gone around there, that is on the exit of turn number 11. He's gone to the grass, and Cy Anthony, who was running inside the podium place in the pro class, it's all gone wrong so quickly as that. But how exactly did he end up on the grass as he now rejoins? It definitely has been a bit of a journey to rejoin there for Cy Anthony, and well, we're going to find out, ladies and gentlemen, because let's give you a replay of what we've rolled for the UK SimRacing Price driver, and here we go. So this was for Cy Anthony a little bit earlier on, making his way through the chicane then, and as he did so, going out to turn number 11, just gets the power down that tight line, and the rear will spin up there, and I suspect that was more steering lock than what he was used to being on that tight line, but the same throttle input, and in the end, just a bit too eager, plus also tyres that have definitely seen better days, and Anthony going around there and very slowly recovering on what is a cross that's not grippy at all, but doesn't want to hit the Alco barrier there. And Cy Anthony, a bit of a frustrating moment, but even the very best make mistakes, we like to say, and Anthony getting himself back on, but definitely losing plenty of places there in the pro class, and that is definitely going to hurt. But as we come back to your live racing, still the best part of a quarter of the race distance to go, so it could go wrong for Cy Anthony. Who else could it go wrong for before all is said and done? Well, we've got Christer Halsoy here, your leader of the pro class. He's still got Mikey Storey. 9 tenths is the gap. It's not changing between these two. Whatever Halsoy can do, Storey can do, and vice versa. They are keeping each other as honest as possible. And right now, the real truth will be who is going to have the edge on the final lap. Because I think it is going to come down to the slenderest of margins. And well, Halsoy at this point, you can understand if the Tractix Racing driver, all he's trying to do is look forward in this race. And well, the idea is you don't want to be looking at your time in boxes, you don't want to be looking at the car behind, because when you do, that's when you start to make the mistakes. Even the more experienced drivers, they'll naturally tell you that when you are the leader, you don't look back, because as soon as you start looking back, that is where you're going to make the errors, and once those errors start coming in very quickly, well, that's where you're going to lose all the race time. But Storey, meanwhile, he'll be chasing this, and he'll be absolutely salivating at the prospect of being able to look for a potential move. He's got to try and find a way to whittle that gap down, because 8 to 9 tenths, that's not going to quite cut it. In fact, that gap opens back up again as they come through the more technical middle section of the lap, only then to start to come back down on the straights. We know that BMW is a bit of a straight line beast compared to the Aston Martin. That a recent balance performance update as of round number 3 did see the Aston Martin's top end speed slightly reduced, particularly how it accelerates, and that has given the BMW a bit more of an advantage in the power zones. However, this Indianapolis circuit has 2 major power zones, and it also has plenty of corners, so it is a very balanced circuit between these two cars, and that's where you see the Halsoy there gets a better run out of the corner, getting past Joel Loudon in the process, putting a lap on the Ford Mustang driver, who steps aside immediately to respect the fact that Mikey Storey's there, but coming down the start-finish straight, with Storey in the draft and also the natural straight line speed advantage of that BMW, he brings that gap down just that little bit more. Now down to 6/10, so it is naturally moving in the direction of Storey by a 10th a lap here, and well, a bit more traffic found there for Halsoy, but it quickly steps aside. That was James Connolly, who reacted immediately there as soon as he saw it coming. So brilliant awareness on Connolly. Others may not have noticed that until they got to turn number 4, but for Connolly, absolutely spot on there. Does not disrupt this battle for the lead of the pro class, which is going to become one of the centre stage battles all the way. But as we say hello to Cy Anstey, who seems to tune in right as we capture the moment where it all goes very sideways for him. And I'm sorry about that, Cy, but I hope you're doing well despite what's happened there. Entering the Hall of Fame with that spin. Well, meanwhile, we come from our pro leaders for a brief moment to what is the fight for 5th place in the Premier class. Here's the man who right now wishes he wasn't in this fight because that moment earlier on cost him dear. It's Alan Lever. And his target in front is Graf, and then it will be Jones, who's the 5th place man in the slow and steady racing machine, who hops his way over the curbs there, and well, turns 5 and 6 very quickly on through, down towards 7 he goes. He has the tow of Stephen Donnelly to work with there, and Hendrik Zilka is only 1.2 seconds up the road. But Zilka has now cleared Donnelly, so the 4th place Premier driver, we've started to try and put some distance between himself and Jones, and we'll be hoping that he can potentially chase down Samuel Clark before all is said and done. But the one thing he's got to keep in mind is that Clark right now is just as fast as Zilka, although that last lap Zilka was 3/10 faster, but the gap to Clark is 4 seconds almost, so therefore he's going to have to quickly bring those laps to bear. But through turn 12 and into 13 and 14 they go, and right now for what is many of these drivers, it's all about trying not to make a mistake at this point and losing that flow. And indeed, when you haven't got that much battling going on, very quickly it does turn to a race whereby it can feel as though you're time trying a little bit, but that in itself requires a very important psychological mindset whereby you don't make mistakes. But make no mistake here, we're not going to be talking about time trialing for much longer, because right now on trial is the overtaking abilities of Mikey Storey here, who sits behind Christer Halsoy, and that gap is down to 4 attempts as they clear turn number 8. Now through that chicane they come up towards turns 10 and 11, but as they roar the way through, right now Halsoy will hold on the Mercedes V8 here, which twin turbo versus where's the twin turbo powered 6-cylinder engine of the BMW. Well, both of these machines, both German power plants, both what is German marks behind the engine, albeit a British body shell there for the Aston Martin. And going through turn number 13 towards 14. Right now, Storey close, but not quite close enough to look for the attack as they head on to the next lap. They won't have too many more of this. We go on to a 37th tour of the circuit. Our race leaders already made the way there. But Halsoy versus Storey right now. Well, that's going to give them the best part of at least another 5 laps to have a fight. And Storey fancies his chances here as they make the way down the start-finish straight. Pulls out to the inside. I think that might be more to sight his braking marker for the first time and just see how important that overspeed is into turn number 1. The next time around, if he's a bit closer, I think pulling out there will be a sign that he's going to go for the move. So right now, Storey trying to get all the information he needs. So I don't think he'll be looking for the move on this lap. He'll be looking for it on the next one, because the confidence is there as Halsoy gets a brilliant run out of turn number 4. It must be said, really putting Storey's exit to shame there. And that's how Halsoy's been able to hold on to this gap. His corner exits are something else. And meanwhile, we have had a retirement from this race for Daniel Shilcock quite recently in the elite class. That's a bit of frustration there for Shilcock afterwards a dramatic start to his race. And of course, we did have the earlier retirement for Helder Gonzalez there in the elite class. It's been an elite class today that has been definitely full of contradictory stories between drivers. But right now we have 2 stars here in pro, and well, Storey and falling backwards there, come through 10 into 11, and a dirty air that he's now all in the face of. Well, I think that might just be hurting that BMW's rotation for these lower speed corners, and that might be giving Halsoy a little bit of relief. Going towards the end of this lap then, and it's going to be Storey who tries to get the better exit out the corner. 6/10 on the exit. He's a bit further back at the moment, albeit he builds up the speed now through 14, so he is still attacking us off camera. We have had Alan Lever and Austin Graf start fighting. In fact, we are going to cut to their battle now. Here they are with Cy Anstey and Edward Berry. Well, in fact, that's not Edward Berry, that's Luke Sherlock behind. Berry's a long way back, but Cy Anstey is right there to play spectator right now. He'll want to try and get past them, but I don't think he's going to be given an opportunity at this point. And I think Alan might be on the radio to his sister team UKSimRacing driver, saying to Cy, can you politely not pass me, please? I kind of want this. And right now, I think Cy Anstey will be looking at that. He'll grin a little bit if I know Cy, and he'll go, okay, then I'll just watch and act as rear guard for a brief moment until I see an opportunity to get past the both of you. Because Cy does love a challenge. But Austin Graf right now, he's under a huge challenge here for 6th place in the Premier class. That Lamborghini is all over the back of him here going down the straight. You can see Graf immediately knows that. He pulls to the inside. Now, will Lever go in tight to the inside? Yes, he will. It's going to be Lever who commits all the way to the tightest possible line. Graf now comes to the outside there towards the wall. Lever on the brakes. It's going to be close here towards the turn to apex. Graf at the end carries the speed. He holds the inside line, but Lever's back there on the outside. And Alan Lever with the traction that's available when that Lamborghini gets it sized up. And now Science, goes all in. And well, Cy there being the best possible teammate he can to Alan Lever. And simply saying to him, right, you got the move done now, I'm going to come through and absolutely frustrate the Axis Sport driver by putting myself in between the two of you so you can run for a brief moment. It's all fair because Society hasn't done anything unfair, but you can see Austin Graf immediately now wants to come back at it with 9. What exactly is going on here? And he forces the move back on Anthony. So a bit of teamwork from the two sister drivers in 2 different classes, and Austin Graf in the end will lose out on the opportunity to battle back with Alan Lever. And Lever will now try to abscond with that 6th place in the Premier class, albeit perhaps for a brief moment. We will see. But a classic battle there, and in the end Alan Lever getting the move done, but Austin Graf proving absolutely resilient there in the Axis Sport Ferrari, and well done to him. It's not over yet between himself and Anthony. He goes to the inside here in towards turn number 12, but in the end he has to settle for it. He's not going to be able to outbrake him there that time around. But from then we come back to the Halsoy Storey battle, and well, that's an absolutely huge run there through turns 5 and 6 from Storey. If Storey doesn't go for it now, I don't know when he's going to go for it, as Donnelly meanwhile comes out the pit lane out my content booth window. He's had to go for a second stop there for an underfuel, and Storey goes round the outside, tries to cut it tight, but in the end Halsoy runs him out of road there legally, says to him, you're not fully alongside, so therefore you're going to have to back off or your nose is going to get chopped off, and with it we'll be both going to the grass. So Storey had a go at it, but Christer Halsoy saw it and took the gamble of essentially saying to Storey, it's either I hold the lead or nobody holds the lead, and Storey knew what was coming and backed off there. So two drivers who know exactly how to fight each other, and they both know when to back off versus when to go all in. But Storey of course will now know that. He'll know that unless he gets fully alongside, Halsoy will play those 50-50 moments where he will try and chop off a nose, and Storey's got to think, okay, he's not playing around with me in front, he wants this win, he's going to dig in for it, and I'm going to have to absolutely extricate it from his hands. But they've got 4.5 minutes left. Our leaders have already got into lap number 40. And they've got this lap plus most likely 2 more, with the fact each lap does run the best part of 1 minute and 24 seconds for our leaders. So therefore, three more laps and 3 more major opportunities perhaps for Dexterous Motorsports' Mikey Storey to try and take the pro victory off Attractix Racing's Christer Halsoy. Both would deserve it, to be fair, but I think Storey wants it just that little bit more for his championship aspirations, although Halsoy would love to take a win, and I believe if he was to take it, it would be his first win of the season. And we're just double checking that. Yes, it would be. He's taken a 3rd in the season opener, a 2nd place in round number 3 last time out, but he's yet to stand on the top podium. So therefore, he's always been a bridesmaid, but never the bride. But today, Christer Halsoy could definitely be the bride here in the pro class, but we will find out because they've not got long left in the distance. But from them, well, other battles on the circuit right now, we do have Robin Powdy getting a little bit close to Joel Loudon, albeit that is a lap down. It's across 2 different classes, but Powdy is trying to make a bit of progress here where he can. And, well, one class we didn't talk about earlier on, but we gave a brief recap of the top 3 of each, was the Premier class. And here is your Premier leader right now, of Ricardo Luis Pereira, who is doing a phenomenal job of leading this class. Well, right now, with only 3.5 minutes to go, he has been absolutely infallible. The only problem is John Watt is absolutely bearing down on him at a rate of knots. That gap between Watt and Luis Pereira has dropped from what was 7 seconds after the pit stops all the way down to a second now. And well, it does seem as though Watt here may have a chance to try and go for this, but there's only one problem. There is a pro drive between the two of them, Darren Sharples, and Sharples here I think fancies his chances to pass Luis Pereira before this is done. And that's going to add a little bit of intrigue here, because what we'll be looking at this, and for Luis Pereira, now this is going to be a big decision. Does he go defensive or does he let it go? He goes defensive. He's going to force Sharples to stay behind. This is a double-edged sword. If he gets it right, he will force Sharples to essentially have to defend from Watt, because Watt will be looking at this and thinking, how do I get past the pro driver? If Luis Pereira gets this wrong and Sharples makes a move, he could suddenly find it as a 2-for-1 pass made on him. And that's why Luis Pereira has to play this so carefully now, because if he gets it right, he gives himself a barrier. If he doesn't, then this starts to happen. And what it is now, Sharples has an open goal here, which is going to look one way, then the other. He's going to commit to the outside down the centre straight, and into that braking zone they come. Does he go all the way around the outside? Luis Pereira fights it to the apex. They're going to be too wide on entry, but will it be too wide on exit into the chicane? And the answer is no. Sharples gets ahead, and now Watt is in a prime attacking position. So here they go, and now John Watt's going to have this lap plus 1 more, and Luis Pereira immediately goes back on the attack. He says, no, you don't, Darren. I want it back. And Watt right now looks at this and thinks, excellent. He's going to try and sneak on through here, and Sharples will be looking in his mirror and noticing that the SRI 7 Privateer Ryan driver wants it just as bad, but he's not going to be giving it there as the two drivers in front of him battle to the apex. Luis Perra goes deep, he goes to the grass, he rejoins, and what goes around the outside? Is it done? It's not quite done yet, because what right now is going to go all the way to the exit. It's going to be a drag race out of this corner. A final lap awaits them, surely, in a couple's time, and well, right now these two absolutely on point, but John Watt takes the lead of the Premier class, but for how long? A small mistake for Luis Perra, instigated by battling with Darren Sharples, and Luis Perra back on the inside now, immediately going on the counter-attack here. He wants this, so importantly, he wants this win in the bag. Watt wants it just as much, but Luis Perra in the end up the inside, gets it down the brakes at least now, but Watt's right there back with him as they come through turns 1 and 2, so this Premier League battle, it will go the distance. Samuel Clark isn't close enough to get involved there and make it, excuse me, a menage a trois, but right now I think he would love to be there. If he's watching still, he'll definitely have seen this and thought to himself, why couldn't I have been there over the race on the Sunday? But as Luis Perra runs out wide, using all the circuit plus a bit more tarmac, we call that VAT. We're heading down towards turn number 7. Well, here comes Watt up the inside, using the brakes on the Porsche's advantage, but there's contact. Well, there we do see what goes all in. Luis Perra tries to squeeze the apex, and in the end he's sent spinning around, and he will drop to second place. And for Luis Perra right now, he'll be absolutely fuming at that one. What would argue? Well, he tried to squeeze me under braking, and once I committed to the move, there was nowhere for me to go. Luis Perra would say, well, I was trying to give him the bare minimum room, but then he made contact with me. But controversial there between the two drivers, and well, that battle ends just as my voice is about to give up, ladies and gentlemen. But as we do have that battle for the Premier League come to a close, and what has been a little bit unfortunate circumstances, but understandably, that one will most likely be a discussion between the drivers after the race. Well, meanwhile, we come back to your race leader, and Joe Nathan right now with only the best part of 10 seconds left on the clock. Well, he has led most, if not all, laps this race, barring those in the pit stops. And for Joe Nathan, it is one final tour of the circuit. The clock strikes 0. Nathan Scott's into the pit lane, and that's for a last-minute fuel dash. And there's a very long pit time here. Even if you do go for a splash and dash, that's going to prove very costly. That's going to put him down outside the top 5 of the Pro class, potentially. And right now for Joe Nathan, it's all about just simply getting this one to the finish line, which he will do so very shortly, as he's only got 3 corners, plus a straight to go. And Richard Simnor has not been able to get close. In fact, he's fallen away over the last couple of laps. And I think Simnor may have needed just to back off and save some fuel, because he has been the best part of 1.5 seconds down on pace for the last 2 laps. But here comes Joe Nathan then, ladies and gentlemen. And well, many would have argued, was it just a one-off last time out? But for Joe Nathan, it's not a one-off. It's back-to-back victories here for your overall and elite winner from Rage Against the Game Esports. And then a further 10 seconds down the road, it's a brilliant second-place finish for Richard Simnor for DCW Racing, ahead of your pro winner, Christer Halsoy, who held off the challenge from Mikey Storey, and the Track 6 Racing drive just outpacing the Dexterous Motorsport BMW to the finish line. Ryan Davis will take 5th place there, 3rd in Elite. And then it'll be a frustrated Christian Furs who finishes the pro podium, knowing that he had the pace to win today, but unfortunately early instant cost him dear. Darren Sharples will then come through to take 7th place there for Old Dudes in Cars, and just behind him we will have your Premier winner. It will be John Watt there after a bit of a controversial end to his battle with Ricardo Luis Perra, but still we'll celebrate the fact that Watt fought his way up into lead. It was a hard-fought race for many in the Premier class, none more so than John Watt. Casper Rotner will take 9th place ahead of Yavi Sierra, and then we will see Ricardo Luis Perra in the end have to settle, at least on track, for a frustrated 2nd place for him, ahead of Samuel Clark, who returns to the podium once again in the Premier class and continues his run of podium since the start of the season uninterrupted. Then it will be from him in the Premier class to your 13th place finisher overall. It will be your Evo winner Thomas Weston, who delivers a brilliant win today. That's what we love to see from the number 98 McLaren. And well, we then will have Edward Berry all the way down in 19th place, taking 2nd place in the Evo class. Well done to the UKSimRacing driver. And then 3rd in the Evo class, taking 21st place on the road, Jordan Jones there for DWR with SimCoach setups, and indeed the final one of the final drivers to finish on that lead lap. But as all the racing comes to a close, ladies and gentlemen, and Joe Nathan takes his trip down pit lane, and with it enjoys the celebrations, well, you can understand the Rage Against the Game Esports drive will be absolutely ecstatic to have made it 2 third places in a row, and now 2 first places in a row. Can anybody stop him? Well, definitely not today here at Indianapolis, as we get ready to take a look at those race results, subject, of course, to Eddie Stewart's inquiries, and here they come. So after a brilliant, what has been 60 minutes of racing here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we got to see Joe Nathan bringing home the overall win in round number 4 of season 16 of the SimRacing International UKSimRacing GT3 Championship, brought to you on iRacing, and we're taking that win ahead of DCW Racing's Richard Simnor. It was a 10-second gap at the end, and it was a gap that gradually grew over the race distance, although many would argue, what if Raz Harper had had a better start to the race? Could he have been involved? But that would be a what-if question that we can always debate until the end of time. Christer Halsoy, meanwhile, he won't be a what-if, he's a certain there, taking 3rd place overall, but for him, the pro win for Tractix Racing, just ahead of Mikey Storey and delivering a brilliant drive to what has been his maiden win of the season, I do believe. And in fact, we double check that, and yes, he finally takes that top step of the podium. The dexterous motorsports driver, Mikey Storey, he'll be a little bit upset not to have made it a win and added to his tally for this season, but it definitely is another podium, and he'll extend his championship lead quite comfortably ahead of Ryan Davies for the Elite Empire Motorsport team. He rounded off the Elite podium there with 5th place overall. Christian Furze was your 3rd place finisher in the Pro Class there for PandaSpec Motorsports, ahead of Darren Sharples, with the Old Dudes in Cars blue driver, the best part of 13 seconds away, but only a second ahead of John Watt for SRI 7 Privateer Ryan, who fought hard but in the end took home the premier win, and the Porsche driver definitely have to dig in deep. Casper Rotner took 9th place for Old Dudes in Cars, ahead of the Privateer of Yavi Sierra. And outside the top 10, in 2nd place of the Premier Class, Ricardo Luis Pereira, who was leading for so long, but his final lap battle with John Watt not going the way he wanted it to, and the SRI Privateers of the Caribbean driver, I think you'll look back on this one with a degree of upset, but also he's got to take a lot of spirit for this one, because he definitely delivered a brilliant race, both in terms of pace and also the strategy. Samuel Clark, he fought his way through in the end on strategy, and indeed showed in this one that sometimes it's just better to be out of trouble, and the dexterous motorsports driver continues his run of podiums in the Premier Class, and just behind him in 13th place was your Evo winner there, Thomas Weston, who definitely was in a class of his own when it came to the pace of the Evo drivers, and he brings home an absolutely brilliant win, and well, for Weston, that is going to be what is his first win of the season, being added to his 3rd place podium in round number 2 and his 4th place last time out. Indeed, right now, many would argue, could he have taken the win in Spain if it hadn't gone wrong? And the answer would have been yes, but he finally gets that first win on the board. But then look a bit further down, and we will see there in 14th and 15th as Hendrik Zilka and Alan Lever for Old Dudes in Cars Blue and SimRacing Mansell. But more importantly, then coming to your Evo podium finishers, we're already talking about your winner. Well, we see Edward Berry there, 2nd of the Evo drivers, 19th for SimRacing Hill. Daniel Pay's round off your top 20 for Old Dudes in Cars. And then outside the top 20, we only had to go to 21st place for Jordan Jones there for DWR with SimCoach Setups, who round off your Evo podium there in an absolutely stellar effort. It was a lap down for Nathan Scott, and indeed it was a lap down for many, from 22nd all the way down to what's 33rd place. The JSD Motorsports driver Stephen Donnelly running out of fuel towards the end and having to take a 2nd pit stop. Not his day today. It was 2 laps down to Daryl Giacovelli at the Privateer in the Evo class, who put up a very strong run early on in the race. We saw 5 laps down to Rob Windsor. He'll be classified as a finisher for SimRacing Hill. And we did unfortunately have several retirements from this one, including a retirement there for Daniel Shilcock, also Darren Giacovelli, Helder Gonzalez, Raz Harper, Christian Maltrek, and Steve Hughes. But coming on to the individual class finishing positions, and this is where all the points are scored, of course, and we begin with the elite class. And here we can see Joe Nathan, your winner by 10 seconds for Rage Against the Game Esports, ahead of DCW Racing's Richard Simnor, who will expand his lead by another 10 points going into round number 5. And Joe Nathan right now does seem to be unstoppable. But then again, our next venue may favour the Ford Mustang a little bit more than the Ferrari. Ryan Davies took 3rd place at Empire Motorsport, didn't have the pace of the top 2, but had the pace to escape everybody else. And everybody else was fronted by Casper Brotner for Old Dudes in Cars, who was 18 seconds behind. Yavi Sierra, one of his best results of the season, the Privateer taking 5th in Elite. And then we did have the retirements of Daniel Shilcock, Helder Gonzalez, and Raz Harper, with Tractix Racing having a difficult day, as did DDK, a racing team. Then to the pro class, and here in the pros, it was Christer Halsoy for Tractix Racing, who delivered, despite the pressure from Mikey Storey over the distance, and the dexterous motorsports driver having to settle for 2nd. Christian Furze, that early instant cost him dear and indeed relegated him to a 3rd place finish, which many would be happy with, but the PandaSpec Motorsports driver, I think, will be thinking to himself today, this is a race which I could have won, but I've lost it all in the opening laps. Darren Sharples took 4th place for Old Dudes in Cars Blue, a further 13 seconds behind, but comfortably 22 seconds clear of Cy Adsey for SimRacing Price, and there was a lap down there for Empire Motorsports Nathan Scott, head of SRI 7 Privateer Ryan Noah Blackwell, who had a couple of spins, not the way he wanted it to go, and Stephen Donnelly there with that last minute 2nd pit stop for JSD Motorsports. And we did have the retirement for Christian Maltrek for America MA70 Esports. To the Premier class, and in Premier it was John Watt for SRI7 Privateer Ryan, who led home a 1-2 for the SRI teams, with a sister team driver there of Ricardo Luis Pera taking second, and indeed I think that's going to get a little bit spicy down in the team garage after the race, just because of the fact the one rule of racing is you beat your teammate, the other one is you don't take your teammate out. And well, to be fair, John didn't take his teammate out, but they definitely ended up in a bit of an altercation, and I'm sure they'll talk about it after the race, and well, I wouldn't be surprised if James Bostock was on the radio to them after the race immediately to discuss what exactly happened. However, I'm sure they'll settle their differences and they'll be back in fighting form for next round, but Watt taking the win ahead of Luis Pera, and then we did see Dexterous Motorsports Samuel Clark gradually making his way to that third place finish. Hendrik Zilka took fourth for Old Dudes in Cars Blue ahead of Alan Lever, with the UKSimRacing Mansell driver coming off the worst of many over the race distance. But to be fair, I think you'll look back at this, I think it wasn't about how he started, it's about how he finished, and he finished on a high by securing a top 5. He was 3 tenths ahead of Richard Jones. Unfortunately, we missed their battle right at the end, with Richard Jones just missed out on the top 5 there for slow, steady racing, but he was 2 seconds ahead of Austin Graff for Axis Sim Sports, and it was a further 22 seconds back to Daniel Pays. There was a lap down for Joe Sparrow ahead of Robin Pownier, and the Sim Coach drive was followed up by James Connolly and Luke Sherlock. 5 laps down to Rob Windsor for UK Sim Racing Hill, and that retirement, unfortunately, for Steve Hughes on what was the opening lap. From the misfortunes of the UK SimRacing Prize Drive, we come to the fortunes then of your Evo class winner, and it was Thomas Weston, as he's known in full, finally nailing that first win of the season in good time as well, by 26.4 seconds over Edward Berry, with the UK SimRacing Hill driver settling for the right to be the best the rest in Evo today. Jordan Jones made it a third place, and the DWR SimCoach setup driver there delivering an absolutely brilliant result, ahead of a lap down for Richard White, with the UK SimRacing Mansell drive being followed up by the second of the DWR SimCoach setups drivers of Simon Hartley, who made his way back into the top 5. Joel Loudon, from the win last time out, he had to settle for 6th today, and a bit of a difficult day on his debut in the Ford Mustang, having switched from the Aston Martin, but the SRI7 Privateer Ryan drive managed to stay ahead of Max Galgay, with the Split Track Esports drive being followed up by Sloan Steady Racing's Alex Brown, who couldn't quite get close enough in the end to retake 7th place. It was 2 laps down to Daryl Giacovelli, ahead of fellow family member Darren Giacovelli, who retired from the race midway through the distance. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the finishing positions over the race distance. And indeed, well, what a race it's been at Indianapolis today, and as quickly as that, the circuit falls silent, and it is time now for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to be on the grid for an ongoing or upcoming series at SimRacing International, or you just want to join one of the fastest growing communities in the sim racing scene, well, for all that and more, we do recommend you join our official Discord, invite link available at the bottom of the screen. And in terms of our series we currently got ongoing, we definitely do love GT3 racing, because on Thursday evenings, we have our Premier GT3 Championship in its 10th season, as sponsored by Trophy.ai. On Sunday evenings, indeed, we have the UK SimRacing Community Sunday GT3 Championship, which you've been tuning into today. And well, on alternate Sunday evenings, we also do have the America's GT Challenge, which is GT3 to a twist, because they're in a multi-class setting, and it is a multi-class setting with the cars they replaced in the World Endurance Championship and IMSA in real life, none other than the GTE machines. And well, if you thought, is that going to be safe, is it going to work out, well, definitely check out the previous broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, because you'll be amazed at how brilliant the racing has been. We do also have new seasons of racing upcoming, potentially on Monday evenings, and well, for those who are looking for a more casual experience, we can of course encourage you to join our free-to-join Practice League, which does run on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings at 10 AM British time. So there's never been a better time to get on the grid at SimRacing International, there's no doubt about it. And just before we do finally say goodbye, well, let's say a big thank you to our league and series sponsors as always, including Trophy.ai, Carme, Modern Technology, SimCoach, where you unlock your true potential as a sim racer and a racing driver, GP2 Group, and last but not least, Motorsport UK's esports division for their continued recognition of us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community. And long may our relationship with Motorsport UK's esports division continue. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we turn our attentions to next time. And next up, of course, we head to Germany to conclude the first half of the season. And at the Hermann Tilke redesigned Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg, it may not be the most popular circuit in terms of design, but those who can find popularity with its twists and turns and its straight may just be able to end their first half of the season on the ultimate high, perhaps as championship leader, if not with just a class win. How will the story continue? Well, all the racing will occur on what will be Sunday, the 26th of October 2025, but come join us as if it were live on Wednesday, the 29th of October, where we'll see how our drivers get on in Germany. Until then, we have been the the SimRacing International powered UKSimRacing GT3 Championship Season 16. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and much like our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.